Sir, once I take your first cuffs off, put your hands on your head.
Okay. I'll be doing a photo of you. We'll be strip searching you, checking for tattoos and everything, okay? Everybody understand?
Probably the challenges are understanding what makes a kid react before he thinks. They explode, they have their aggression moment through fighting, and then it's over. And then they'll even apologize, all within a 3-minute period.
It seems like it takes them longer than it should to learn from their mistakes, so they make them over and over.
A normal day down here, there is no normal day.
You have to be willing to engage, have a confrontation appropriately, and be able to direct, guide, and lead these kids to where they need to go. If you're one that wants to sit back and hope everybody does things correctly, this is not the right population for you to be managing. You need to make sure that you're willing to engage every kid every time and be consistent in how you apply discipline, guidance, and how you role model behavior.
I think the one thing that the public doesn't know is how tragic the lives of some of these kids are, and the incredible struggles that so many of these kids go through, due in no part to anything they've done, but because of the actions or inactions of adults. The entire philosophy underlying the juvenile system is rehabilitation. And in addition to that, the law requires us to place kids in the most home-like, least restrictive, closest to parents, and seldomly is DOC that place.
Boys' school and girls' school is basically prison for children, you know, for teenagers, kids. And it's run by the Department of Correction, as is the adult prisons. Going to Indiana boys' school or girls' school is the most restrictive placement or restrictive punishment I could give them. Because you lose your freedom, you're in a prison.
If you're at the Department of Corrections from here, it's the last stop. We don't send kids to the Department of Corrections to teach them a lesson. We have tried, and we have to balance the safety and welfare of the community versus the help that particular system can give that kid.
Every day I think about how I'm gonna survive when I go outside, is I'm gonna be able to come back home peacefully and then just wake up in the morning and I just think about the same stuff over and over every morning.
I was taken with my dad and I was put with my mom because my dad went to prison for 10 years for child abuse and attempted murder. So
I can talk about some of the stuff that I went through, but not all of it, because some of it still hurts, and it's just some of the kids went through it just like I have, but it just, I don't know. Some of the stuff I can't put out like that.
I started selling drugs hard, and I just started basically doing everything I could. There'd be times where I sleep in abandoned houses, and when times I get hungry, I figure the only way I can eat is to rob somebody. So I go around robbing people, selling cocaine, marijuana, and X pills, just trying to live life.
And my mom went to jail for stabbing her husband after my dad 47 times in the back. So I was put in a place called Meadows, and I was there for like 9 years. And after Meadows, I went to a place called Res Care. And after that, I was put in a foster home. I was in a foster home for like 2 years till I got arrested. So came here. I've been here for like 4 or 5 years.
I think it would come from seeing a lot of violence and living in a bad neighborhood with bad stuff happening. That's what I think it is. Because I see a lot of bad stuff every day, all day.
I'm actually lucky I'm in here because, I mean, I'm not lucky because this ain't the place you want to be, but I'm thankful because when I was out there, I was drinking and I was smoking and having sex. When I'm in here, I'm not drinking, smoking, or having sex, so it kind of puts a lot of stress off of you.
The thing I'm going to remember most about this experience is the people in here, the other offenders that I'm here with. Because the best way that I can describe this place to someone that's never been here is just imagine being locked in a room with 23 people that do not like you. It's the best way I can describe this place.
I turned 15 here, turned 16 here, turned 17 here, and turned 18 here. I mean, it sucks. There's a lot of officers in here that really do try to help us. And a lot of the students might not like them because, hey, they have to do their job. I mean, oh, you're gonna write me up, you're gonna write me up. Screw you, this, and that. They're doing their jobs, they got their families to feed. I have no problem with the officers here.
When somebody says, I wanna work here, we wanna make sure that they know what they're saying. But I think from my personal perspective, what I say to prospective applicants is, I'm looking for somebody that I would leave my 4-year-old grandson with. And what I'm looking for from them is that they understand the importance of their responsibility in ensuring the safety of the adolescents that they're charged to work with. So when I hire people in here, I want them to understand the implication that if they take their eyes off of the adolescent that they're supervising, something bad could happen. And it could happen to the adolescent, it could happen to someone else. That's the level of responsibility that an individual is charged with when they come into this environment. It's not a paperwork job.
I talk to the staff about this a lot, and what they all have to realize, regardless of their position inside the facility, whether they're a teacher or they work in maintenance or they're an officer or a counselor, their ultimate goal and responsibility is to make a difference in the lives of the kids that we have at this facility.
New staff need to understand first and foremost, when you come into this environment, you are a role model. If you do not conduct yourself in such a fashion that you're professional, firm, fair, and consistent, and reasonable in the performance of your duties, the students will not respect you. They will treat you as a peer. You will get the profanity, the disrespect. And if the kids feel that you care about them and you're invested in what they're doing, the students will respond accordingly. They will move through their treatment program better by seeing a good role model.
Most of these offenders have committed adult crimes. That's why they're here. They've showed a pattern of those crimes. It could be anywhere from murder, the burglary, the robbery, to any type of a sex offense. Most of the crimes that they've done here, if they were an adult when they committed them, they would be at an adult penal facility.
Some of the juveniles that we get are low functioning, and they appreciate that concrete instruction, that consistency of instruction where they are continuously told what the expectation is.
I enjoy it, I like it. You know, it's not for everybody, but I like it. If you can reach one kid, then you've still done a good job.
Well, okay, I thought I was gonna come here and get raped because I heard that there was all the girls here were lesbians, and I thought that people were gonna want to beat me up because I'm smaller, and I just thought horrible things, horrible things.
No child should be victimized, but a great deal of what is characterized as victimization is consensual. It's just that the children are not old enough to legally consent. It doesn't make it right, and it doesn't make it appropriate, but when you house 300 teenage boys full of testosterone and bad ideas, coupled with bad judgment and little impulse control, you've written the script.
I think in many ways, like adult sex offenders, they're an enigma to people in the community. The word sex offender tends to bring on a sense of fear in people, and maybe right behind a sense of fear is a sense of hate and anger, because attached to those two words, sex offender, is a presumption about a number of things that people make, that these are very, very dangerous people. Sex offenders tend to be individuals who engage in behavior that although they often know that it's harmful and hurtful to other people, there's an internal motivation to continue to engage in the behavior, and oftentimes to perceive it as okay. As a result, one of the challenges in working with sexual offenders is helping them understand why they should be motivated to change.
So first of all, what we're going to cover is what led you to DOC, then we're going to cover your progress in DOC, and then we'll probably talk about your plans after DOC. All right, so that's the kind of general idea of how we do this. All right, so what led you to the Department of Corrections, sir?
Child molestation. I molested. My charge was molestation of my 10-year-old cousin, 8-year-old Relax, 6-year-old name.
So all your victims have been family members?
Not all of my victims.
So what have you worked on while you've been here to address that issue?
I have done sexual deviance and social growth and development. All in all, I've learned my behavior pattern, how I've started the victim selection, and all the way to victim abuse, and the process afterwards. I've learned how to stop my inappropriate thoughts before they've started, in the early stages all the way to before the incident.
While you've been here, have you sexually acted out any while you've been here?
Yes, ma'am, I have.
Was that before you completed those groups or after?
Yes, before.
Okay.
So talk to me about how you think you're smarter than everybody else.
Yes, I do recognize it. I do believe that I'm smarter than anybody because of my experiences. I know y'all are older, much more experienced, and I try to force what I know onto other people, and with that, gain dominance, another power control. Basically manipulation. Another one of my thinking I'm smarter than everybody is I have seen death before. I've been beaten to an inch of my life. I've been choked out so many times. That's what another thing that has shown me that I've lived through that. I've lived through almost dying, and it makes me feel smarter than most people because some people haven't had that experience.
Jack, how close to trusting someone are you?
Staff-wise, I show them all the same amount of trust as I would show people on the outs. If I deem that they need to know a little bit more about me, then I'll talk to them. Instructor Johnson, he can read through me like a book, so I'm straightforward with him. Cooley, he doesn't know much about me, but I can trust him with certain things.
Do you expect to continue in any kind of treatment after you leave?
Psychological, yes. For my depression, I'm a manic depressant. And plus my bipolar. So yes, I plan on going to psychological therapy. But also, one of my parole stipulations is going into another sex offender program.
In the specific field of juvenile sexual offending treatment, is that we have a history of working on the sexual assault cycle versus the overall behavioral pattern that the individual has, which includes the potential for sexual assault. So we're treating this the late stages of a behavioral pattern when they start to consider actually offending. And that's all we're treating. So we have whole programs focused only on the sexual assault cycle. These kids do not have a well-developed sexual assault cycle. These are juveniles. That's, even with adults, it's not really a smart idea. All it does is teach the kids when they're about to do something, so they have huge buildup, they're about to do something, that's what they're going to do. Well, at that point, half of each of them wants to do it, more than half. So it's a horrible disadvantage to try intervention at late stage in their overall behavioral pattern.
And juvenile sex offenders don't think in terms of, from a sex act, having a beginning, a middle, and an end. Juvenile sex offenders are hypersexualized, so the visual part in their mind of just touching somebody for 5 seconds is more than enough for them to have sexual gratification for. Some of the kids we have even been at 2 or 3 other placements trying to get some of those hypersexualized behaviors under control. So we have extremely hypersexualized students that come in, or students who have been physically and verbally aggressive and have been unable to complete residential treatment program.
They feel that they have, and it's a candy store again. It's an all-male facility, and some of these offenders think that it's a difference between being homosexual inside the facility and being homosexuals outside the facility. You'll hear them say that. It's prison. It's not the same thing when we're outside. Yes, it's the same thing, but they have it in their minds that it's not, and they're not gay. It's inside. As long as they're inside, it's not gay. But when they get outside and you do it, it's gay, because they just got to get their needs met. So that's how they feel it.
The offender incidents, especially in the line of sexual misconduct, a lot of times I find those they happen in the evening, late at night, in the rooms, or when they go in the shower, or the staff not paying attention and there's more than one person in the shower. And then so you look at what staff doing. When those incidents come up with sexual misconduct, you look at, again, the victim, the suspect, the roommates, what was going on. We look at cameras, if there's cameras in the room. And then the other question you do ask yourself is, what was staff doing? Staff working that unit, were they doing what they're supposed to be doing? Were they following the 5-minute watch tour? And then from there, then I'll look at the control post, because the control post mans those 5-minute watch tour buttons. Were they doing what they're supposed to be doing? Do the way it's supposed to be done. Yeah, follow policy and procedures, and I think that's the key thing.
I'm about to call one friend and see what he wants to say.
Last night, everybody told me they saw Martin and Harley.
Okay.
I don't know how this is, but they said.
Where were you two at when all this was happening?
I was asleep. I was asleep. They waited until we went to sleep.
Okay. Okay.
And I was like, that ain't possible, because I know Martin was like that. Mm-hmm. And then 3 people already told me that Martin.
Hold on real fast. 08 to block.
In here, it's all zero tolerance. I mean, it's not acceptable, so I think we have to watch them. But while we also have to normalize that, we have to tell them what is healthy. Because what I often hear in here is, well, you don't want us to have any sex ever again. That's not the goal. The goal is to replace unhealthy or maladaptive sexual behavior with normal and healthy sexual behavior. In here, you don't have the opportunity to explore that. So make it conscious. Talk to them about it, and also say, but these are the rules, and this is what we follow, and we'll be making sure, we'll help you follow these rules by supervising you.
They just didn't decide to do this all of a sudden one day. They noticed an attraction to the person. They noticed a connection to them. They might have even felt first an emotional connection to them, and that satisfied a need that they had, and so they found themselves thinking about them more. When they were unhappy, they found that thinking about them made them feel better. And so there's this sort of preoccupation. And then if there's anything at all that is sexualized within that, it's a very small step to fantasizing not just about, I wish I had that kind of a person, I wish he was older, I wish he wasn't in prison, I wish we could be closer, and then in sexual fantasies, their face appears, and they typically fantasize about them, typically stimulate themselves, and it becomes a favorite thought. Then they sort of do a reverse inhibition, where they try to, tell themselves how terrible those thoughts are, and they shouldn't be having those thoughts, and why am I doing this, which is really simply more preoccupation with this person, and so they're getting in deeper and deeper, and to a point where they are thinking about them all the time, and they start feeling like it was meant to be, and wondering then if they could get away with it. And then if the person on the other side helps them at all, which of course this population will, then it's lambs to the wolves.
Any 14 or 15-year-old that's locked up and the only women that they see are the officers coming in, I mean, there's this thing called hormones. And I mean, you can't be mad about that. Now, yes, they are responsible for their actions. I mean, you gotta think, in all reality, you got these staff that's coming in and they're working with a bunch of males all day, and I mean, some of them might not be happy at home, or they might have problems with their husbands, or they might just be lonely. I mean, and you got young 18-year-olds here. Well, you got to think, any male that's locked up in there and an adult puts an advance on them, or they think they can get away with putting an advance on an adult, and something happens, I mean, that's an 18-year-old horny young male. I'm sorry about it. I think it is entirely the adult's fault, because they should be the ones that's like, no, when you're getting a major conduct report, OSB, obscene sexual behavior. I haven't been locked up in a while. See, I don't even remember the majors. I'm doing good.
Well, you have to stand up for what is right, and you have to let these kids know that they need to respect you as a woman and not look at you as like what I want to say, where they womanizing you and think that they can disrespect you. Because if you don't, these kids will take advantage. I mean, a lot of them have missed girlfriends and all this other stuff, so they have emotions going on, and if you misrepresent yourself, you can easily get caught up. So be consistent with these kids and not allow them to venture off into their minds going somewhere else. We could try to kind of keep them on the right path.
When I get a report that the staff is my perpetrator, usually by the time I get the report, the facility has already at least put a temporary gate closure on that staff member, or they're not working within close vicinity of the students here. I work real close with internal affairs at the facility. I also work with whatever state police detective is looking into the situation. We interview everyone, compare notes, see what is going on. Then at that point, if we find that these allegations are true and we substantiate, the officer will have a chance to come in and speak to my director individually with their attorney or whoever they have, if they have one.
Staff are supposed to be a network of support for each other. However, most staff don't talk about their personal life a lot at work. So you have to listen to very subtle clues and to reference the things that are going on. Most of the information indicates that there was some type of strife or dysfunction at home that led prior to those type of behaviors going on.
You got to do it. You're responsible for doing it, friend or not. And so if something comes up and you don't, then again, you're subject to disciplinary action. You have to pay attention what's going on around you, because, it could be a fight behind you. It could be somebody, doing something in another room they shouldn't be doing. You got showers. It's very busy. It's a very busy day.
Told you to stop, didn't I?
And it's a really weird dynamic, but there is a fine line there, and I think at times staff have crossed over the line, and coupled with kids manipulating and also encouraging this type of behavior, because adolescent boys see certain types of behaviors as, quote, trophies, so they're actively seeking out those kind of things.
There have been times when I've been meeting with staff after something has happened at the facility, and you would scratch your head and say, why didn't we know that? And what I say to staff is look to the person to the right of you and to the person to the left of you and ask yourself, did you notice anything before? Because I guarantee you the individual who has recently made a mistake here in this facility and is paying a dear price for that had somebody on the left of them and on the right of them who didn't say anything. So we all have an obligation, more so than in many jobs in this environment, to help one another.
This is my little wrap on masturbation, okay, for what facilities ought to be doing and teaching their kids. First of all, you have to understand that typically it separates between the therapist crowd or the counselor crowd and the line staff. And line staff will complain about the kids' masturbation because they got to deal with it. Therapist staff will then say, it's perfectly normal, part of adolescent development, you've got to just go with the flow. And they say, line staff then says, fine, you come down here and deal with it. And the issue is to get a commonness, not a difference. They have a consistent way of dealing with everything else, right? If you break curfew, if you don't show up in line, if you get out of, if you're cutting up in line, if you don't make your bed, there's a consequence, and it's pretty much standard. And that's bread and butter of residential. So you just have to have one on masturbation, and it has to be clear, and has to be taught, and has to be, everybody does it the same. And staff who choose to be negative or punitive should be disciplined. They should be held accountable for that, and it's inappropriate staff behavior for this population. First, you have to talk to kids about masturbation. You have to teach them what is a healthy form of self-stimulation and what is not. The first one is that the kind of classic one is that it should be private. Nobody else should have to deal with your masturbation. Second one is it should be sanitary and healthy. Some kids will masturbate to a point where they have abrasions, and girls will have vaginal infections using material or stuffed animals or whatever. And so they have to know how to keep others safe from their own body fluids. So you have to have policy about where is it okay to masturbate? Can you masturbate in the bed and just leave it there? Well, no. You couldn't do that in your home. The other area, though, that's really important is the amount of masturbation that people are doing. The reason too much masturbation is not healthy is that they're using it as a coping mechanism. So every time they get upset, every time they have a little stress, even boredom, well, they go to masturbate. It's just a way to keep themselves, a way to fall asleep at night. A lot of these kids have trauma histories that they keep it out of their minds during the day, and then it hits them when their head hits the pillow like a ton of bricks, and so they masturbate to tense their body up, have orgasm, release the endorphins, and that relaxes their muscles and they fall asleep. So they're using it as a coping mechanism, and then they don't learn other coping mechanisms. So they have to learn to deal with their stress. And the other reason that they have to watch their numbers is the only way that the body works that way is to feed it with good software, good fantasy. So in order to generate a fantasy strong enough to masturbate 3 or 4 times a day, they have got to keep changing it. Basically, we call it deviating the schema, changing, and that's where they get into more and more painful forms of fantasy, whether it's dominance, whether it's painful to themselves, whether it's more bizarre, will give them an excitement because of its strangeness and uniqueness, even imagining it.
This environment is not normal. I don't care where you go, it's not normal. And so bringing individuals into this environment and providing them that training and that supervision is critical. So if it's a correctional officer, they're going to work in the sex offender unit. They're going to work in the intensive treatment unit. They're going to work in the segregation unit. They'll work with the more aggressive students. They'll work with those who have special needs. And after they've done that, we'll have conversations with them about, where did you feel most comfortable? What did you like? Where do you think you can add something? Where do you think your role would be best played out?
A lot of the kids that we get here have been thrown away many times before they get here. This is their last opportunity to really have an opportunity to get some help before they get back into the community as an adult. So we take use a lot of our energy to make sure that they get some help while they're here. This is their last chance, or they're going to end up in an adult system for a long period of time.
It can be dangerous. while you're here, the thing you got to remember is that you're dealing with people, especially with juvenile. Some of these kids have it better off here than what they had at home. A lot of the kids that we've had here have been abused in the past before that they've even come here, and that's contributed to their issues while they're here. And their officer's the first nice face that they saw, and sometimes it's hard to be able to work and associate with that person.
So, you know, I tell my staff, you don't ever give up, because you never know what's going to work today that didn't work yesterday, and you know what didn't work with this kid may work with this one. So you have to have a wide variety of programs. Even though we get frustrated every single day, you don't ever give up, and you continue to be that positive influence in their life to make that difference.